For her improvised performance work, she has done the comedy short The Talk. She took home the gold at Actors 24-Hour Film Competition. And most recently, Amanda Joy has been part of she's been selected for the WGC Diverse Screenwriters Program. So she's the newest member of the Beaverton Online's writing staff, and her other writing credits include The Magpie Bridge, Hunter's Chance, Quota, Dig to China, which was also an official selection at the Toronto International Short Film Festival in 2015. You have your degree from Ryerson. You got the Dean Prize. Yeah. Awesome work. She's a Merit Scholar and dual Ontario Art Certificate holder. Powerhouse, right? Now I'm also really excited to introduce her collaborator, Samantha Wan, who is an amazing Toronto-based film actor in her own right as well. She graduated from the National Theatre School, which is in Canada in 2011, and then she made her debut playing a principal role in the features Devil's Mile, which later...
The same one. Yeah. You'll notice the
same people, right? And then you've also worked on Leslieville, Ruby Sky, PI, and Out with Dad. So an amazing powerhouse in the web world. And then your first project was Sudden Master, which was a Kung Fu online series commissioned by Omni TV, which has totally cleaned up the hardware at the festival circuit. Like, a lot of hardware. It's pretty impressive and pretty fantastic. She's been celebrated with the Women with a Vision Award for her work as a producer and creator, as well as Best Female Action Performer for the year for the project. She's been named Best Actress in a Drama at the Hollyweb Festival for Sudden Master, and behind the camera Wen also co-directed her shorts Where Is Kitty, Go Lightly, and Second Gen 2014. You're a dancer, you love to move, you fight. What I'm curious about, though, is that Second Gen started as a short first?
Yeah.
Cool beans, so we're going to get back to that. So most importantly, they're here to talk about their series that they've been creating that's called Second Gen. How many of you are aware of this? Yeah, it's been getting lots of great press. I'm so excited for your debut. Ultimately, for those of you who have not heard, Second Gen is a coming-of-age comedy about two second-generation Chinese and Filipino-Canadian millennials who are best friends, and they're experiencing all of life's firsts. So it's been produced by Don Ferguson Productions, and it's the new digital-first comedy was shot this summer with the showrunner of Jeff Beetleman helming the project, who also acts as the executive producer with the team at DFP. One thing that I'm really excited about is that Romeo Candido was slated to direct. Did he direct all episodes? Fantastic. He's only listed for one, and so I wanted to get on IMDb. So that's, yeah, on IMDb he's only listed for one credit. So I was like, did something happen? Is it because they haven't finished them all yet? What's going on? And what I love about this and what we want to get into is just this team aspect that you have had, that you've worked together, you're bringing in key collaborators that you've worked with before on this series. But before we get into it, I think it would be really good for us to actually see what we're going to be discussing, and then we're going to we're going to have some conversation after that. So if we could please cue up the two clips, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Wear anything. Pride's basically Halloween, but with empowerment and dog-shaped water guns.
How about this? It's colorful.
Do you have anything a little less heterosexual pajama party? No, Jen. That is the 5th time your mom has texted in the last hour.
Since I left, Mom's been signing her and Dad up for classes. Line dancing.
What happened to independent Jen, who refused help setting up our bookcase and floating shelves?
I'll be quick.
There is no quick with your mother. There is just slower, and passive-aggressive. If you answer that, I'm gonna go to Pride with your cool cousin and leave you here to give your mom opinions on cowboy boots.
Touche. But I still don't know what to wear.
Perfect!
Can I just ask one question to them? I just also wanted, oh good, it's working, to ask, because how many people are interested in trying to move into television? I feel like we didn't ask that from like just indie anything. Okay, that will be more useful to you as a talk.
Thank you. No, that's great. And so I think it would just be really great to start about your individual careers. You've both been actors and content creators, and how you got to meet one another. I mean, I've done my research online, but they don't know.
Okay. So Amanda and I both met. You heard our common credit is The Devil's Mile. It's a horror film. We were the Japanese schoolgirls who got kidnapped, and then first day we accidentally got locked in a trunk, for real.
And neither of you are Japanese.
No, neither of us Japanese. Yeah, so indie film-wise, you know, they couldn't afford to like get a film car and everything. It was a real car. They closed it. It automatically locked, and as we were like spooning each other and they were trying to find the key, we're kind of like, maybe we should make our own stuff. That would be great.
Yeah, there was also an AC in the trunk with us, so it was like 3 of us
Three
just waiting
people.
for them to find that key.
Yeah, and then after that film, we both ended up going out for geisha roles. And it just seemed like we weren't seeing a lot of representation of diversity ourselves on screen, so we decided very naively that we were going to make a television series. And it's been about 4 years now, and we're finally here, which has been great. It's been a crazy journey.
Go ahead.
Originally, we actually did conceive it as a web series, and just as the work was piling on and more was getting done, we thought maybe we should make a television pilot.
And so, I mean, I think it's really important to talk and walk through that 4-year process from concept to delivery. So you started off, you were writing together, and it was a short film, or how did that evolve?
So in the beginning, Amanda wrote the script for the film, and then I produced and co-directed it.
Okay.
And then after, it was all our own money that we put forward for it. It was 22 minutes, so it was kind of supposed to be our idea of what we thought a pilot was.
A sizzle?
Yeah. And then we cut it together and shopped it around at the Banff World Media Festival. Do you want to?
Sure. So it was sort of a dual-pronged attack, if you will. So Sam went off to Banff, and she was able to network and pitch the show to as many people as possible. She carried an iPad around and made everybody watch our 30-second demo. I'll let you talk more about that experience because I wasn't there. But we also submitted to a festival called Real World, which is an international film festival in Toronto that showcases diverse talent. And it's there that we actually met one of the executives from Rogers and were able to pitch the show. And eventually, after sort of bouncing between networks, they kind of called us out of the blue and wanted to put us into development.
Yeah, I think it's good for people to know, because I didn't know this, how long it takes for a broadcaster to get back to you about things. It was, with the minute we had talked to them at Real World, I think it was 6 months later, we were like, it's dead. No, they don't care.
Because terms of trade, it's supposed to be 6 months, but
Yeah.
it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, and like that's pretty lucky for us. And part of what made it our ability to pitch to was getting a production company. So our production company is Don Ferguson Productions. They made Canadian Air Farce. And for pitching, I kind of do this like 2-prong thing where at first CBC was interested in it. Like not like, yes, we'll pick it up, but like, this is cool, talk to us later.
They were recording you and you recording them.
Yeah.
And then they did the executive shuffle.
Yeah. And then
Which they do.
Unfortunately, and then we weren't with them anymore.
For
But
those of you who aren't familiar with that, that's when you're working with an executive and then they change everybody's jobs around. And then your executive no longer knows you.
Which is why it's always the tip to build relationships with executives, because they move from place to place, not just with networks.
yeah, unfortunately, our executive wasn't in a network anymore, so we couldn't move with him. But what makes it really easy if you're trying to catch a producer or trying to catch a production company is to say, hey, DFP, I've already spoken to CBC, they're kind of interested. And then you can say to CBC, hey, we've already talked to this production company, they're kind of interested. Make sure that's for real, like don't lie. But I feel like things in Canada, people always want to know that someone else is interested in the project. And you can just, as long as you get a little bit of interest from enough people, then that's enough to kind of make the pitch happen.
And so how did that meeting happen with Don Ferguson Productions? Like, did you go in, or was it a quick coffee? How did it work?
So at Banff World Media Festival, how many people have heard of it? Great. So then, for anyone who hasn't, it's the biggest like television basically festival, and there's no screenings or anything. It's just workshops, industry, things like that, and you can sign up for the Connect and do a speed dating round where you just try and pitch people. You get about 5 minutes. It's insane. If you're like me and didn't know it existed, then you can stand to the side and beg to have any free spot that they have left. So that's how you can meet. That's how you get to meet Fox, NBC as well. The U.S. comes up there, which is really great. It is expensive to sign up to go there, but a lot of people also sometimes offer scholarships. I know in Toronto, WIFF does. So
WIFF does here as well. I've been the recipient of both Toronto and here. And I'm going to put another call out in regards to Banff. There's a Banff LA that I actually find is far more.
Great.
It's a day. It's $100, and all LA is there because it's in LA.
Yeah. So at Banff, that's how we met Don Ferguson Productions, and that's also how I got the Omni deal as well.
Amazing, because they're wonderful people. Like Lucy and Don, like they're like a family almost. They really want people to succeed, and I feel that if you have them on board, that helps that trajectory. So you would admit that they were a key kind of player in that happening?
Well, we met them at Banff. Yeah.
And then did they go with you for meetings to Rogers? Or
yes,
did you,
yes. So after we had the production company, then it became the production company helping us meet broadcasters. Because you can, but if you're our age, people get nervous. So having a production company was a big deal.
I think it's important also to make the distinction between the process in Canada and the process in the U.S. In the U.S., you would approach network in general. In the U.S., you would approach a network and they would assign you a production company. In Canada, we do it the other way around. So if you do have a concept that you want to pitch and you have something ready, the process is to first approach an established production company and then have them make the contact with the network. And they work sort of like an agent, but then when it comes down to actually producing film, producing content, the series, producing content, and producing promotional material, they're also in-house doing that as well.
Yeah, like CBC and all the broadcasters, they don't make anything in-house. It's not like the U.S. with studios.
Yeah. Everything is done, shopped out to production companies.
And so you take your meetings, you get your deal, and they give you an order for 6 digital.
They gave us it first started with a development contract.
Okay, thanks.
So Rogers, after the real world thing that Amanda mentioned, said, okay, here's some money to make a series Bible, a pilot, and a second episode.
Okay.
And then we had to hire Jeff, right?
Yeah, so at that point, so the process is we made the spec pilot. We pitched it at the film festival while Sam pitched it in Banff. Got a production company, got a broadcaster interested, signed what's called a development deal. I'm not sure what level everybody's at, so I'm just going to explain what this is.
Absolutely, it's great.
That's when you sign with a network saying that you're going to develop usually a series Bible and a pilot script, sometimes a second episode as well. So we were in that process for about a year. At that time, we were asked to approach showrunners. It was in pilot season, so that was a bit of a scramble. We did eventually decide on Jeff Biederman, who Siobhan had mentioned. He had done Life with Derek and spun out, and we felt at the time he was the right person to bring out the specific working dynamic between us, because we had always worked by ourselves and had always worked together. When you do take a step from independent to network, it very much changes the expectations. It changes the work process. Everything has to be documented. You can't just think of something and put it down. And so we needed to develop a new system.
And that process. And how was that with Jeff, like trying to figure that out? Because it can be challenging if you've been a creator and you're used to doing your own work, and then all of a sudden an expert is brought in to be an expert on your work, but you might not even know them that well. So I'm just curious what that dynamic was like.
I thought it was great. I feel like it wasn't that, like, we actually then had a writing room.
Perfect.
And eventually it did expand because we went into further development to write the rest of the 4 scripts.
And so your writing room consisted of how many people?
For the first 2, it was myself, Amanda, and Jeff.
Okay.
And then Kevin, the producer, was in the room.
Jeff was serving as a story editor at that time. So
that's
what
great.
he was doing was giving us notes and helping us break the stories, and then we would write the scripts together.
Yeah, and then eventually Carly Heffernan, who is this amazing female comedian from Second City, she came on and joined us as well.
She wrote some of my favorite jokes as well in this
Yeah.
series. She's a wonderful woman to work with.
And just, again, differentiating the process of television, the difference between Canada and the US, again, if people don't know, is that we don't do pilot season here. And that's because pilots are produced by production companies, and we don't have a lot of big houses like Lionsgate and stuff to make pilots. So instead, in Canada, we tend to put, not lots. There's tons of pilots in the US and only a couple things that go into development in Canada. And from development, that's when they go to TV.
Yeah, I've heard from networks that they'll have in development at any one time anywhere from 3 productions, 3 shows, to the largest one I heard was about 40, which is not a lot compared to the US.
Yeah, but they'll only make the first episode, is the difference.
So I just want to try and make sure everybody's understanding this process. So you're in your writing room. You've already done 2 episodes.
We've
then
written them.
You've written 2
We
episodes, but
didn't
not gone to camera.
yeah.
You've written them. And then your writing room expands. You bring in 1 new person.
We brought in Carly.
Yeah,
Carly,
so they
yeah.
asked us after we had those 2 episodes in the Bible, they were like, we really love it. Can you write 4 more?
Perfect.
And we were like, yes, we can, but it was a shorter.
That's
it
always
was
the right answer.
Yeah, always say
Always
yes.
say yes.
It was like, yes, we can, but we need another writer because it's a lot more writing. So that's how
That's
Carly
the yes
came on.
and
Yeah.
from an improv background.
Yeah.
And so, and what was that process like? Did you then beat out the next 4 episodes together? I'm just curious from a creative point of view what that room looked like, if you don't mind explaining.
Sure. So what we would end up doing is plotting out. We knew where the first and the second episode were. Then what we did was we plotted out where we wanted to go for the season in terms of a loose arc. We did have the luxury of writing all the first 6 episodes at the same time. And we came up with concepts, we came up with pitches. So the first thing you do is you send a pitch to the network. So you might send them 12. Usually it's just a log line explaining the concept. I hope you all know what that is. And then they'll choose from there what their favorites are. And then you'll get approval to move forward into what's called a premise. A premise is a page, 3 paragraphs, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Then you send it, and then you play the waiting game again. It comes back. If they approve it again, you go to outline, which is a document usually half the length of an actual episode. So for a 22-minute script, you're going to be sending them 11 pages. This one, you break down more each action line, each dialogue line. He goes here, he
Yeah,
goes
it's
here,
basically
she does this.
the script, but without the dialogue.
Without the
If it's a
dialogue.
good outline, you should just be able to, writing the actual script should just be like, and now
Yeah.
we just plop
pressing,
in the dialogue.
pressing
like,
enter, and you
it's
get better
easy.
at it. I think this is one of the key differences between working on it ourselves is that before, when we came up with an outline, we just had to decide if we were okay with it or if we came up with an idea. If we were okay with it, this has to go through the showrunner, the producer, the network, and then trickle its way back to you. So there's sometimes quite a length of time between the steps.
It's usually a week to send something out and then hear back.
And sometimes, depending on the selections that they made, we would end up changing other episodes because certain concepts no longer fit in the story arc. And then after that, what we would do is we would get in a writing room and we would beat out ideas. We put down Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and we try to figure out exactly what is happening in each scene. And then from there, we would divide it up again. Once we get approval from the network as well, we would divide it up again. So each person had a different first draft. So I might take the first draft for one episode, and Sam might take the first draft for another. But then what we would do is we called it carouseling, where it would go around the circle before coming back to the original teleplay writer. Then at that point, you would do your last pass, send it off to the showrunner, and then it would go to the network. And then a few weeks later, it would come back and you do it all over again, because inevitably there's something.
Yeah, and just usually we would beat it out and then you write the outline from the beats, just in the process of how that kind of works.
And because, I mean, there's a formula that we're to work with, and then every now and then, every beast has its own kind of tendrils and their own way. So was Romeo involved, as he was your director, was he involved in any of this process, or he was just gun for hire when the time was
He
right?
came when after we knew we were going to production.
Okay.
Yeah, but then he also, after that, the director goes through and gives notes too on
Absolutely.
and has questions. So he did that, but mostly it was done. And it's funny because a showrunner and a director have a
Different take.
different
That's why I was-
take, and also showrunners kind of have more power in television.
Absolutely.
The showrunner actually makes a lot of decisions over the director, and Jeff was there almost directing almost as much as Romeo, more so on the story points, whereas Romeo was more focused on us and the characters. But when it comes down to that, the showrunner and the director's jobs really intertwine a lot.
When
Showrunner's the big boss.
when I did my series, I invited my director in, so we did a lot of our beating first, and then would have him check in every now and then. But he was also working in a mentor capability for us, and we were just kind of making things work as we could.
And we
right?
didn't know if we were going to get production, so we
You
didn't
never
have-
know, right?
You never know, so we didn't have a director at the time when we were very, very happy when it happened.
And so with that, as actors, you get notes all the time. You know, try it this way, try it that way. How about this? How about that? Was there any training for your writer's ego in regards to now taking notes coming from executives and other people? Like, how were you able to handle that as creators, out of curiosity?
I think that's where Jeff, who is an experienced showrunner, was really helpful. He was really good at sometimes translating what was being said, what the note was, if we didn't understand it, or and being like, okay, this is a really good one. This one maybe we should fight back on a little bit more. And I
Pick
think
your battles.
Pardon?
Pick your battles.
Yeah, know what hill you want to die on. And no, it's true, guys. And then I forgot what I was going to say.
So I think that it's important. One of the biggest impediments to your success is going to be ego. I was lucky enough that before we started the process, I was already writing for shows on Nick Jr., Teletoon, and some development work for Disney. And I believe Sam had already been working on her web series with the network before that. So when it came time to actually getting network notes, it's never an attack on you personally, and I don't think either of us brought that. We were just have confidence in yourself and have confidence that you can handle the notes, but like Sam said, know when it's worth fighting back. And of course, when you end up in a situation where it's diverse TV, it's about women, sometimes, there are things that you do have to fight for if certain things are sort of passing under the radar on a certain note or something like that. You have to understand that you're representing a group as well.
Yeah, and I think I had actually a different producer from another project give me really great advice. It's like, it's so easy when there's a broadcaster or someone above you to be like, they're idiots, they don't know what they're talking about. But it doesn't help you in your mentality, and it doesn't help you in your relationship. So like,
It doesn't help you get a second season either.
no, and it just makes no one's really against each other to. It doesn't mean like you have to be a puppet, but it means like really actually think. First off, everyone is smart, hopefully, who's giving you notes, but give them that credit first to really consider, and then decide what you want to do with it.
Yeah, executives are executives for a reason, and they've worked very hard. Many of them used to be writers or used to be actors. And I think also there's a tendency, especially for new writers, and I know I made this mistake myself, to take notes very literally. Sometimes executives will give you notes, and it's because they're not happy with what's there, and there could be something problematic. They don't exactly know how to fix it, so they might give you a note you think, well, that's really dumb, but then at the same time, it's always about what is the essence of the note.
So I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk diversity.
Yes.
I look forward to the day when you're a filmmaker and not a female filmmaker. Now you're wearing two aspects of diversity. How does that feel?
I think it's a crazy thing in the sense of, yeah, we automatically represent women and Asian women. Like, it's never just our own, it's not just our story. It's like, we're looking to you to represent all these things.
By the very nature of our appearance and our ethnicity and our gender, we automatically have political connotations in a political context applied to us. So while we ourselves, I don't see my race because obviously I can't see my face all day, and you don't see your race, and nobody sees their race, but it's a thing that's applied to you. And you have to be very conscious of that fact when you are creating content, that while a decision might be made by a creator with a different ethnicity or a different gender, that doing that same decision or making that same decision can have a totally different context and connotation if you make that same decision. So it can be a bit of a minefield, but it can also be very empowering. And so you have to take the good with the bad and find ways to excel as an artist and find ways to negotiate when you have to, and to understand that only by creating content and only by and only by learning the ropes can you actually get to a point where you can help change the industry and help change the culture of the industry so that it's no longer a diverse show or a women's show or a woman filmmaker or a man filmmaker. It becomes we're filmmakers and we're artists and we're storytellers. And while we are not all the same, our different voices are all equally valid.
And as you change industry, you change society because it's on the screen and it's infiltrating and making people aware of the reality of the world.
And it's
not
also
just what spoon-fed them through.
Yeah. I was just saying it's a really big cloud of a lot of responsibility, and I think the only way to like really get through it is to just think about your story specifically, because like you can't represent everyone.
There's a lot.
There's a lot, so you just have to really think about your story specifically and just and hone in on that, and then own when you've made mistakes, because we're gonna make mistakes for sure.
I would vehemently agree with what Sam said. I think that you have to be open to the fact that you're never going to be perfect. Everyone's going to make mistakes. I think by the very nature of film and as creators and storytellers, all of us aim in some way to be subversive, to change society, to tell people things. So for me personally, I felt like, yes, there were always going to be certain decisions that I'm not happy with, but at the same time, thinking of the larger picture and thinking of our power as artists to inform and to change society, and especially with comedy, to be subversive and to criticize the things that we see or to shed more light on them. That was always a driving force, and that's something that can keep you going when you're on your 7th ramen dinner for the week. And you and your eyes are tired and you have to hand in this outline by tomorrow. I think that'll keep you going, just separating yourself in a way from what you're trying to do.
And relying on your team.
Yeah.
I think because exactly when you're handing in an outline at like 2 a.m. and you're like, this is not good, but I have to trust, like, I don't have any brain space anymore. I know Em is going to take the next pass on it. She's going to do it, and that. Sorry, Amanda.
Yeah, sorry.
I know she's going to take the next pass on it. Great. Like, because I can get a little too worked up on, like, it's not great, it's not perfect, but when you're working, especially in television, and you're laying that track and you got to get something out right away, get it out, pass it to your next teammate, and let them work, because otherwise you're holding up everyone else. And that's what also makes it important to get the right teammates.
And when possible, work together in person, because there's an energy that you feel and a collaborative nature that you feel, and I think you'd agree with me, just building on what she said, that you need to be able to feed off of each other, and I think for some people they can do that by phone or by Skype, but sometimes the intention and the meaning and what the person and the essence of what a person is trying to say gets lost when you do it through a webcam with a lot of lag, you know?
Absolutely. So where was your HQ when you were working, your headquarters? Where were you writing?
In the beginning, it was coffee shops when it was just Em and I in our houses.
And the ones with no internet interruptions?
Yeah. And then eventually it was really kind. DFP allowed us to write in Kevin's office, literally.
Yeah, we were actually neighbors before. When we worked on Devil's Mile together, we were living in this area called the Beach. And so sometimes we would write at my apartment, which was a basement where the ceiling was really sloped, so we could only work on one side, because once you hit another side, you just hit your head. So that was our original HQ, and we're kind of like, look how far we've come. We're basically Microsoft. No, we're not.
And so speaking of that, how far you've come, I'll talk to the other elephant in the room, the money. You've each had series that you were working on. What was that budget level like? You don't have to give me exact numbers, but just roughly.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think we're allowed to say that.
No, but your web series, like your first one.
Oh, my first web
yeah,
series.
your first web series,
Yeah,
just to kind of show the growth.
Yeah, so the web series that I made for Omni, which is also Rogers, that was about 100K.
And you were doing how many episodes of it?
I did 5 6-minute episodes, and so it was about half hour of content total. They were each 6 minutes long.
So 10K each.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah,
Okay.
which was tight because it's all stunts. If anyone's ever worked in stunts, it's like double the money to have to make that.
We're union as well. That's
Yeah,
an
we're
important
ACTRA.
distinction.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so ultimately, $100,000 to do 6 episodes, about $10,000 per episode, which is equivalent to a short, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then you're moving into these 6 digital first. How long are those episodes?
Those are half hours.
Half
They're
hour.
full half hours
Perfect.
that are going to
Yeah.
be on City. Yeah.
And is there a rough budget? Like, could we say you're doing 1 episode for,
I feel like we can't say.
if I may, I'm going to
Sure.
say, like, I think what tends to happen is 1 episode is close to what your whole budget for your series was before, or close to, or double, like.
Yeah, I mean, like it's definitely not as big as we're not working on the budget of Modern Family in any way. It's definitely independent. We're definitely in like the million range for everything.
For the
For the
whole
whole
series.
series. For the
For the whole
series.
thing, whereas a
For
lot of
6, yeah.
a lot of places will have like $1 million for 1 episode. So like we're in a new way of filmmaking right now where people are
Absolutely.
making tiny budgets, like very tiny.
I think
in that
this is where it's sorry to interrupt you, but just building on what Sam said, I think it's advantageous actually if you are coming from an indie background, because now that we have so much web content, now that people are shooting 10 pages a day, 15 pages a day, and networks are coming to expect that you be able to pull that off with the same money you would on web, maybe a little bit more. So coming from a background where you can prove and say, I created this, we shot it in 2 days, and it looks good, is actually quite an asset and makes you quite a viable asset for a network.
How many cameras?
One most of the time. Sometimes we had 2. Did we actually? Yeah.
There's only 1.
Yeah. No, we had 2 once, I think.
Oh yeah, we had it once.
Once, like when we were really tight for a day. But even shooting with 2 cameras sometimes is not so productive anyway. But yeah, it was just 1 camera.
Yeah.
And your DP, same throughout, or?
Same DP. It was also the same DP, mostly the same production crew and team from my series Set and Master.
Okay.
So it was Romeo, and then Dave Lamb was our DP, and then he hired most of the same key grip electric. And that was really amazing because that meant that they already had their own kind of language to each other. They knew how to work really quickly. And Dave Lamb, our DOP's best asset, is that he can really work fast. He's low drama. Even if we're like, I'm sorry, Dave, you have 10 minutes. He'll be like, okay, and he'll figure it out, which was key for us.
It's amazing.
And Easter egg, he was also the DOP for Devil's Mile, where
Yeah.
we met, and the DOP for our original short.
Yeah.
So you have a shorthand there. It's really great
Yeah,
that you're working with the same team over and over again. So that also kind of grinds down your time. You're not worried to have to explain an inside joke to somebody. And so my curiosity then as well is how long were you in production for each episode? How long were you shooting?
We shot the whole 6-episode series in July,
Okay.
in
Like,
a month.
So you shot it
18.
as if you would a feature, so to speak? You
Yeah.
just shot it all out?
18 production days, block shot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they were all shot. Yeah, it wasn't separate each episode. Again, we're back to indie filmmaking. We're just shooting
Absolutely.
everything in the house,
Yeah.
everything in the
So
same
how did
story.
you paper that with the union? Did you go under like a new media, or did you do a hybrid agreement just because it's digital first? I'm just out of
Yeah,
curiosity.
no, yeah. We did. So the first episode was always a television, so that went under the IPA, and then it was a reduced budget for the other 5 for the other 5.
Even though you're block shooting?
Even though we were block shooting, so
Okay.
it was still working. It was still working as television, like a series in that way. Being up to date with everything that's actually happening politically, like the CanCon content.
CRTCs.
Yeah, being 6 instead of 8 is big deal right now.
It's
like,
huge.
find out about that, learn about that, because that's going to affect us so much.
As well, as Canadian artists, we often have to wear so many hats. If you're actor, producer, writer, director, also be an activist and understand that the policies that are put in Parliament and the policies that are put in by unions are going to directly affect you and the funding that you have access to and your opportunities as an artist.
Yeah, I feel like I do want to say, how many people actually know about like the whole CanCon thing, the 6 points, 8 points? So anyone who doesn't, it usually in Canada the rule used to be to get like funding and everything to be a Canadian film, you had to have 8 out of 10 be Canadian, like Canadian key. So like your director had to be Canadian or your producer had to be 8 out of 10. Now it's 6 out of 10, which means that the US can come in and bring their DOP, their producer, their director, and their lead actor to all be American.
And access funding.
and access our funding.
So there's this very limited
And
amount of...
burn out our crews so they're not available for us.
us.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's true. It's true. No,
No, it
find
is.
out, guys, because like it's happening in October 13th. Yeah, 13th. Find out about it because it actually is going to affect us greatly. In that now all these American shows can come up, take all their stars, all their key, and
For those,
grab our funding.
for those of us who've applied for funding, I'm sure you're well aware that it's very, very limited in this country. And so having people come from another country and also access that funding is bad for Canadian content, but it's also bad for Canadian creators, especially if you're planning to move into television, because at this point, they can call somebody from the US, they could call Seth MacFarlane and give him Canadian funding and you'll never get your series made. So make sure that you get involved. PSA over.
It's awesome. Thank you. So I'd love to open it up to audience and see who might have a question that they would love to ask our panel. Questions? We've got one here.
You said something about the writers at UCO getting involved with, like, because you're the creator and the actor of this series. Yeah, both of you. So is there any instances, excuse me, on set where the director or you got in conflict with what the story was about or what the script was happening? Can you just talk a bit about that?
I think definitely when you get lots of people involved, it is a learning curve from moving from working just for yourself, where your voice is the only voice or our voices are the only voice, to understanding that it becomes about everyone. I think the important thing to realize when there are disagreements is that the project is no longer just your own, and that the project now is this different entity than it was before. Somewhere from where we made a short film to where it went to series, it became something else. And so we have to be, I mean, obviously reticent to fully surrender if they said, well, we all want you in rice hats and we're gonna have gongs in every episode. Then it's like, okay, this is the hill I want to die on. I'm not wearing a rice hat. But yeah, just understanding that it's a different object, it's a different product, can help you get through those moments where you feel like, well, this isn't my show. And it's like, well, it's not really just your show anymore.
Our show.
Yeah. Also, the way if you're an actor and the writer to work through it is prep beforehand with your director. Really, really talking with your director about what the idea is, what your vision is. Because once you're an actor on set, there's so much happening that you kind of have to trust them. There's no time, especially if we're running on a tight budget, to get into a huge debate unless it's the hill you want to die on. Mm-hmm. So like really the prep beforehand and really having that long talk, and that's something that's really worthwhile, is making sure that you guys are, as much as you can, be on the same page beforehand, and then you got to trust them when you're on camera.
And I know that was actually a more difficult, a difficult leap was actually in the acting process, because I've done a lot of indie cinema and I've done a lot of digital comedy. There's a really big stylistic difference between what you put on network TV and what I'm assuming a lot of us might watch on Netflix or watch on a computer. And so you need to understand as well and research and do your research and do your prep to understand the specific style of network comedy.
Absolutely. To just kind of riff on your idea, how do you deal with conflict between the two of you? Do you like paper, rock, sit, ping pong, foo for it? What do you do?
We just talk. I mean, it helps if there's like Jeff or someone else to like
Third party.
the third party to decide.
Yeah.
We're also like really good at therapy talking, where we're like, okay, when you say this, I feel,
Yeah.
it makes me feel. And it's like, but when you say that we should maybe do the outline first, it makes me feel. Like,
Yeah, and like also we've been working together so long, you get to know your patterns of like what, or like, oh, we're doing the thing again where you
doing the
think this and
thing,
I
don't do
think this.
that.
Okay.
I think it was important to where we realized that the only person in this world who understands exactly this experience, for me, is Sam, and I'm assuming, I hope so, for Sam, it's me, and understanding that in that way, with nobody else understands the process of this specific thing as much as we do, and so we have to be allies in that fact, and we have to support each other and bring out each other's voices. And I wish I could say that we knew that off the beginning, but it was definitely a learning curve.
Yeah.
And yeah.
We would like have to sometimes at one point we were like, okay, once a week, at the end of the week, we sit down and we just air out all the grievances. Because otherwise it would build up.
Kitchen sink it, right?
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah,
keep
we
piling
just
it up.
sink
It's not
and
healthy.
then be like, okay, let's do this again.
Yeah, and then it became a point where you realize that as much as we were always on the same team, within that team, there's always like a littler team because there's only one other person who understands, and I think that was the big change.
You're each other's best allies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like being married, guys. Whoever
We
you
are.
create with.
She's. Are you the wife?
That doesn't matter in this day and age anymore.
Exactly.
Touche.
Touche. All right, there's another question here.
I've just got
If
a
you just wait for the mic 1 second, it's
for
coming.
Jack.
Yeah, it's being videotaped.
I just wondered whether you have any advice for shooting, creating, editing comedy, like any tips or insights you learned along the way. Doesn't have to be all of those, just one.
Yeah, no.
I think one, especially if you're an actor or you're a director, learn how to edit because it will affect your performance and it'll affect the decisions that you make. And I think just looking at it, I mean, with comedy especially, comedy is so specific. Every show is a different entity. I know for example, in Europe, they're more into, they call it the banana and the stick, which is just all of the scenes are one person making another person feel incredibly uncomfortable, and then watching how the stick reacts to the banana that's all like crazy and stuff. Whereas in Canada and in North American television, I think it's a lot pacier, it's a little bit broader, and everyone's in on the fun is the difference. So you have to know your genre, and especially with digital, know your audience, know who you're aiming for. If I was aiming for somebody who's maybe 24, 25, I might make something a little more sardonic with a different pacing than if I was making something for someone who's maybe 45 or 50.
Yeah. General things that I feel like I learned on set for the comedy aspect too. Like if you watch a lot of it, like like there's never any close-ups. Sorry, I can't do that at the same time. There's never any like tight close-ups. Most comedies like Jeff was never like too close. Back the camera up all the time, all the time. It always was like never closer than like our hips. And also for the acting aspect of it, I remember we were always told like, okay, get rid of all the extras. It's just really clean. It's about the rhythm of the joke and just getting that and delivering that. And if you have the space to add a bit of improv, that always helps people kind of just kind of find the groove, because often, so many times, I can't tell you, that we would be on set and we're like, oh, this isn't as funny, like saying it out loud, and be super open then to like changing it and
Who
working
wrote
it.
this?
Yeah.
So I come from a very almost hyper-realistic school of acting, so actually making that leap was pretty hard. So at some point, you have to be okay with letting other people be your eyes so that you don't feel like you don't look like you're in a different show when it gets aired. And understanding that style and just doing as much research as possible, like I said before.
You just, given the theme of diversity, I'm just curious about that audience you mentioned. Who's sort of your true fan base, and where are you wanting to affect that change through the content, really?
We're kind of looking at 20, like I could say millennials, but what age
I
range
hate
is
that word.
So like 20s, basically. I like some people might be like more female skew, but we have boys in the show too. And I think in Canada, either you're second generation or you have a friend who's second generation. So anyone who's really experienced that, I feel, is our audience right now. Actually, sorry. There's something interesting about digitally, people talk about finding your demo. But digitally, demo is no longer age, it's interest, right? I'm not looking for someone who's 18 to 20. I'm looking for someone who's into pink ponies. And that can be a man, that can be a woman, that can be 40. It's more about, things.
I was gonna say
I like pink ponies.
Yeah, so Amanda would be my demo. And I feel
Only
like that's
one.
more where the realm of, the interest of that experience.
Interest in how and where they consume their content,
Yeah,
I think, is really relevant.
Yeah, for sure. I think that a story that we tell a lot, actually, is we pitched our show originally at a contest, and when we pitched it, this was shortly before we ended up signing an option deal with a production company, the judges at the contest said, I don't know if anyone would, quote unquote, I don't know if anyone would watch a show about those people. and about how nobody would watch a show about second generation people of color. And then when we got off the stage and we're walking back to our seats, fairly defeated, a lot of people, young, old, people of color, women, even like Canadian guys of European descent, I don't know how to say that, but dudes, they like tugged on us, tugged on our shirts, tugged on our coats and said, hey, I want to watch your show, don't give up, I would watch your show. And as we came back, people just kept saying, I would watch your show, all the way to the back of the audience. So it gave us some encouragement that while maybe at the time the industry wasn't ready for something like this, and in a lot of ways took for granted the way that other voices are valid, there were people who really wanted to hear Sam and I's story and who really wanted to see themselves represented on TV. And I think right now what you're seeing is the fruits of those years, because shows take a while to develop. Fresh Off the Boat, Blackish, Kim's Convenience, all of these shows would have been developed around the same time, and now we're all coming out with it now, and I think that that's a really, really good thing. We never consider shows that are diverse and subversive as competition. In fact, we're quite good friends with a lot of the people from Kim's Convenience and a lot of the other Canadian shows, Blood and Water. So we see each other all as allies and understand that the nature of changing society and being a change maker is uniting and saying we're here and being confident in that.
That's fantastic. And, we had a little quick chat out in the lobby and we had talked about funding and we've talked about the successes. Do you mind letting people know that there were other applications you applied for that were not successful?
Sure. To be honest, like once we got a production company for Second Gen, I was less in the finance realm of knowing what we applied for and what we didn't get and what we did get. I can definitely talk though for Sudden Master. We had applied for the IPF, which I think, hands up if you know the IPF.
You should. They're sponsoring today.
Okay, if you don't, guys, they give $150,000 for you to make a show, like make a web series. So go look it up. If you know about the IPF, then you should know about Cogeco, which will give you another chunk of money just to make a pilot. So basically, we applied to that. We got to the second round, didn't go through, but then we applied to the Bell Fund.
Yes.
And the Bell Fund, that one you do need a broadcaster to give you a broadcasting license. Broadcasting license is envelope money. Every year, a broadcaster has an envelope of money that they're given that they have to spend. And if you get some of that envelope money, then that opens up money for other funds. So then we got the Bell Fund, but I totally thought we were sunk.
And that's why I felt it was really important to put that out there, because often it's hard enough to write your script, but then to try and have to write a funding proposal for that script, it's not always easy. But once you have that template, you can plug it into many different applications and to not give up. The IPF only funds 11 applications. The year we applied and got funded, there were 167 applications that year. They fund 11. So you have to keep putting it out there. Like your first application might just be that they're finally getting to learn how to spell your name properly. You just have to keep knocking at that door and not give up.
And for the applications, I know this for IPF for sure, but probably other applications, now it's so competitive, you need a production company on. But what most people do is they just walk up to the production company and be like, if we get IPF funding, would you support us? And they're like, sure. And then you can put their name on your application. You do all the work for the application. But then if you got the money, the production company would help you. And that's kind of quite big to have a production company on your application nowadays.
On a side note, just as Sam had brought up envelope money, which is so important, it's also important that you understand the dynamics of the industry from a financial perspective. So anytime you have a merger, anytime you have a buyout, 10% of the sale needs to go to funding artistic initiatives. So if you hear Shaw and Chorus are merging, or Bell and anything are merging, there's a buyout, find out where those resources are being allocated, because you may find a resurgence in funding, or there may actually be programs that are put in. So, for example, I went to the Bell Media Diverse Screenwriters Program, and that was funded in part by a sale that Bell had done, where they had to put 10% into that program. So find out what they are. When you hear there's a merger, find out where that money, community money they call it, is going to be allocated, and find out how you can access it.
And there are great programs. I mean, I was a Bell National Fellow. It was another pocket of money that was put forth, right? So there's the diverse fund. There's so many different programs. I'm curious what will come out of the bids that are going to Super Channel right now and how that'll fly. Yes, please. Yep, I'll just let you get the microphone, please.
Okay. You're both really smart and very outspoken, very hardworking. So, of course, I want to ask you, what do you think the future holds? Where are you going to put your efforts in the future? Where are we going?
Did you?
I can go first.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. I'm thinking. I have thoughts, but go. Yeah, you go first.
Well, first of all, there is no future when you're still making your series. Everything is today. I think, I mean, I'm moving more. I've realized more and more as we were looking for people to fill certain creative positions. And to be fair, it was very short notice with our productions. As we were looking through lists and lists and lists, I noticed how little, especially women, are represented. So part of me feels like, well, now I have an opportunity. While I might not necessarily have originally been drawn to do directing and producing, I almost feel a sense of responsibility in terms of making sure that our stories are told accurately, making sure that, I mean, as Canadians, we all have responsibilities to make sure that our stories are told accurately. It doesn't matter if you're from the prairies, it doesn't matter if your parents came here on a boat, it doesn't matter. We all have responsibilities as artists. And when you find that your group is underrepresented, understand that the consequence of that is that your stories are not going to be told accurately. The generations coming are not going to see themselves reflected accurately. And so you have to think forward and think, what can I best do to change and to improve our ideological landscape? And so for me, I'm now starting to produce more short films. I'm looking for ways to network, especially with other women, but it's not only about women. I just happen to be a woman, so finding what is it that you feel is not told. If you're, I mean, and I know I've heard from some Caucasian male film directors where they think, well, what am I going to say that's original? Well, maybe you come from a very working class background and that's not as represented in the arts anymore. Maybe you come from a very small town that has its own issues and that's not represented. Find what you want to change about society and find how you can be a voice for that change, and I think that that'll inform where you want to move in the future and what projects you take on and what position you find yourself in.
It's funny. Someone actually had put this so perfectly when I got asked a question about pitching, and one of the best questions to answer in your pitch is, what problem are you solving in the world? Like, what gap are you filling when you're pitching? It's really great to lead with that. Or not lead with that, but have it in there. It's funny. I had like a totally different take on that question. And so my thought,
okay.
that's why it's good, because our brains think differently.
But we still do the fusion pose on every red carpet.
Yeah. I can't do it.
I didn't know what it was, and I made her do it the first time.
So I'm where moving to next is, it's like, it's always a question, where's the money going? How do we make this happen? Because I think independent film is harder and harder to like actually make money doing. Web series, no one has figured out how to monetize that. Television still has money in it, but they're getting a bit freaked out by Netflix right now. So I'm really I'm just keeping my eye on what's going of where the stories are being told. Right now, my brain, I think it's going to be, it's going in the television but online. And so I'm wondering what that future is, and I'm trying to keep my eye on that and on VR as well, because that's going to be the next big thing that everyone's trying to figure out.
I find VR fascinating. I can't do it. I get sick. We had a whole day on VR, and I hadn't looked at the aspects of science, training doctors on surgeries through VR. I'm like, oh yeah, that would work. Just teaching people how to walk again after a stroke. There's so many other aspects that VR can thrive, not necessarily entertainment driven, but other industries driven. So I don't know, I find it fascinating how people consume their content. I'm a nerd. I use this program called Keyhole, and I follow people's hashtags for my audience, and it breaks down gender, location, and what device they're on.
It's a little creepy to me that that exists. Yeah.
And that you can easily just
Yeah.
plug that into an application.
Sometimes I hate the future.
Yeah, I think being multi-platform right now is something.
And
like-
tell a story that's true to you. Don't try to make what you think people will want to watch. Make what you.
Yeah, it's
believe
more
in.
like know your story, and then now just the interest of where storytelling can be anywhere in any form now, which is really exciting. But trying to find out where.
Be the first one to do what you do.
Although nothing is original anymore, so don't beat yourself up. The only
We're
thing
giving really conflicting
know.
advice here. Like be round,
Like,
but
but
also
not- but
square.
not
Act
this.
like a bird, but also a little bit like a weasel.
just be specific to you.
You should take away from this.
Look like the innocent flower, but be the snake, the serpent under it. Shakespeare, right? Well, on that happy note, I think we're about to wrap it on up. Did you have any other last things that you would like to say or put out there? I think it's really important for you to tell everybody where you're airing and when.
Yeah.
Please.
That's important, yes.
Yeah, so we're going to be airing on City TV Thursdays at 8:30, October 27th. And
You got a fantastic time slot. Who you're up right after?
yeah, we're after the Mindy Project.
After Mindy
which
Project
is
and right
pretty
before
amazing.
New Girl.
Yeah, and follow us on at Second Gen, and you'll get all the information there. And
Our Twitters, too.
and our Twitters as well. Like we will
they
talk
there?
to you. That's
Okay.
like
they're there.
that's the thing. That's the big thing now too. Is
Yeah.
interacting with your audience.
Yeah. Oh, and so the other thing I would have you take away is I know I had said this before, within a project you're all allies, but understand that in the industry we are all allies. And there's enough pie to go around. I see a lot of people who maybe don't do as well as they could because they feel very competitive, but be there to support each other, be there to work with each other and to bounce ideas and to help each other, because only by uniting with each other can we actually change the broadcasting and the film landscape in North America.
Yeah, and I think my thing that I would say leaving is know your goal, what you're trying to do. So you have your story, which is great, but if you want to get it on television, if you want to get it on the web or whatever, know exactly what that is, because you can't do it all. It's not a time of like, I'll just make my thing and then people will see it. Like it's not. You really have to know, like, we did decide we were going to make television, so that meant we weren't going after views online. It meant that we weren't spending money on too many festivals that weren't going to help us meet people. It helps you narrow down what you should be doing, what you should not be doing. A good story is really important, but knowing where you want and what you want out of it will cause you a lot less stress in the whole process, which is pretty hard already.
There's a really great saying, I don't know if anyone else does archery, I do archery, and that you can apply to life, which is that it's very hard to hit a target when you're blindfolded. The idea being that if you know where you're going and you know what you want, it's going to be a lot easier to hit that target or get close to your target than if you're shooting blind. So know what you want to do, just like Sam said. I think that's excellent advice.
So, Sam, Amanda, thank you so much for an amazing panel.